September 28, 1944, began like so many other mornings in the Pacific War, with heat already rising from the coral and the sea lying deceptively calm. On Ngesebus Island, part of the Palau chain, the Japanese garrison was ready. They had done everything by the book. Major General Hoshi Imamura's men had turned a narrow causeway into a masterpiece of defensive engineering. Mortars were zeroed to precise distances. Machine guns overlapped their fields of fire so tightly that nothing moving across the strip of land could escape. Artillery crews had their coordinates plotted down to the meter. 470 defenders waited behind reinforced concrete, staring at the only route American Marines were supposed to take. Every military manual agreed on one thing: amphibious assaults followed the path of least resistance. You hit the beach closest to your objective. You take the obvious route. The Japanese had spent 3 years studying marine landings across the Pacific, and they believed they understood American thinking perfectly. They knew where Colonel William "Bucky" Harris and his 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, should land. They could almost set their watches by it. As dawn broke, Japanese gunners peered through their sights at the empty causeway, fingers resting on triggers, waiting for the Marines to charge straight into their carefully prepared kill zone. But the Marines never came. Instead of movement on the causeway, the defenders heard naval gunfire echoing from the wrong direction. Shells were crashing inland, not along the approach they had spent weeks fortifying. Confusion rippled through the Japanese lines as the perfect plan began to unravel before a single American had appeared where he was expected. From aboard his command vessel, Colonel Harris studied the island through his field glasses. In the soft morning light, the causeway looked exactly like what it was: a death trap. He could see the mortar pits, the machine gun nests, the artillery emplacements dug into coral and concrete. Intelligence reports confirmed what his eyes already told him. 470 Japanese soldiers had turned this strip of land into a killing field designed to slaughter Marines attempting the obvious approach. At low tide, the causeway was barely 50 yards wide, a funnel that would compress his battalion into overlapping fire from every direction. Harris lowered his binoculars and turned to Captain Walter Stout. Both men understood the situation instantly. The Japanese were expecting them to come straight across. Every gun on the island was pointed at that causeway. Standard doctrine said they should land there anyway, supported by overwhelming naval and air fire. Harris had seen how that doctrine played out at Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Saipan. He had watched Marines die because they did exactly what the enemy expected. When Sergeant John read, Macaulay approached with questions from the men, Harris looked away from the causeway and toward the open ocean to the southeast. Those beaches were narrow and exposed to heavy surf. They were farther from the objective and harder to reach. But they were also lightly defended. Aerial photos showed only scattered observation posts and light weapons. The Japanese had concentrated their strength where they expected the attack, not where no rational commander would choose to land. Harris made his decision. They would not cross the causeway. They would hit the island from the sea. The plan was audacious and risky. The Marines would have to travel nearly 2 miles in exposed amphibious tractors, fighting swells that could scatter or swamp them. They would give up the advantages of a short approach and concentrated firepower. But they would also achieve something far more valuable: total surprise. While Imamura's forces stared at an empty causeway, the Marines would come ashore behind them. Naval gunfire shifted. Instead of pounding the obvious landing zones, the battleships Iowa and New Jersey walked their 16-inch shells across the island's interior, targeting command bunkers and supply dumps. Aircraft shifted their focus as well. At 0630, the first LVTs churned through the swells toward the southeastern beaches. Harris rode in the lead vehicle, watching the shoreline grow larger through spray-streaked glass. 2 miles away, Japanese soldiers still watched the causeway. Private First Class Tatsuji Ishida scanned the empty strip of land through a periscope, puzzled by shells landing where no attack should come. The kill zone was perfect. The plan was flawless. Surely the Marines would appear any moment. Instead, the first wave of LVTs ground onto the southeastern beaches. Resistance was light, exactly as Harris had predicted. Rifle fire cracked from scattered observation posts manned by soldiers who had never expected to repel a major landing. Macaulay's squad splashed ashore, boots crunching on coral sand. These defenses were meant to observe, not to stop a battalion. They fought hard, but they were overwhelmed quickly. Flamethrowers cleared bunkers. Demolition charges shattered concrete. Within minutes, Marines were pouring inland through gaps the Japanese had never intended to defend seriously. By 0700, 3 companies were ashore and advancing through coconut groves and coral ridges that shielded them from the heavy weapons aimed at the causeway. Japanese radio traffic turned frantic as commanders struggled to understand why American gunfire was hitting their rear areas while their strongest positions sat idle. The surprise was complete. The first Japanese counterattack came from a reserve company rushing through unfamiliar terrain. Ishida ran with them, sweat slick on his hands as the truth dawned. The Americans were already inside the defensive perimeter, attacking from directions no one had planned for. Static defenses meant for frontal assaults were useless against Marines moving through jungle and coral. Pillboxes faced the wrong way. Machine guns could not traverse fast enough. Near a communications bunker built into a coral ridge, Macaulay's squad met stiff resistance. The bunker's firing ports dominated the causeway, but its rear entrance was guarded only lightly. A flamethrower team moved forward. When the fuel ignited inside, the explosion echoed across the island, and black smoke climbed into the sky. With the communications hub destroyed, Japanese coordination collapsed. By 0830, Harris had achieved what doctrine said was impossible. His battalion had established a secure beachhead, advanced inland, and seized key terrain with minimal casualties. The perfect kill zone still waited, guns trained on empty water. Now the Marines held the advantage, ready to roll up the defenses from behind. The destruction of the island's fortifications became systematic. Bunkers designed to resist frontal assault fell quickly when attacked from their unprotected rear entrances. Flamethrowers filled concrete chambers with fire and superheated gas. Positions meant to hold for hours collapsed in minutes. The battle compressed into a series of short, brutal engagements, each ending the same way. Ishida found himself trapped in a mortar pit built to rain shells on Marines crossing the causeway. The weapon could no longer engage anything that mattered. When the flamethrower team approached, he chose survival over death, stumbling out into the blinding sunlight with his hands raised as fire consumed the position behind him. By mid-morning, the southeastern beaches had become a secure supply line. What had seemed like a dangerous approach was now an asset, allowing the Marines to reinforce without ever using the causeway. The final resistance lay along the northwestern coast, where heavy weapons faced seaward. From inland, those same bunkers were vulnerable. Marines moved through cover, closing in on rear entrances with demolition charges and flame. The largest bunker housed a coastal defense gun capable of threatening warships miles offshore. Its walls were 4 feet thick, its roof reinforced to withstand battleship fire. The crew had trained for months to engage targets from the sea. They had never prepared for infantry at their back. A shaped charge blew the steel door inward. Within minutes, the most powerful weapon on the island was silent. The last Japanese counterattack came around midday. Survivors from shattered units charged in desperation, hoping to retake the central ridge. Underground tunnels allowed them to approach close, and for a moment the fighting was fierce. Machine guns fired from concealed caves. Marines hugged shell craters, reading the ground for signs of movement. The turning point came when a flamethrower team reached the main cave complex under heavy fire. Flames poured into the tunnels, filling every chamber with lethal heat. Organized resistance collapsed. Ishida emerged from a secondary tunnel, uniform singed, weapon lost, the battle already over in his heart. By early afternoon, the island fell silent. The numbers told the story starkly. 470 Japanese soldiers killed or captured, against 15 Marines killed and 33 wounded. A fortress built over weeks had been dismantled in hours. Colonel Harris stood among shattered bunkers and twisted guns, the causeway still intact, still empty. The implications reached far beyond this small island. Harris had shown that rigid defenses built to counter predictable tactics could be undone by innovation and audacity. The Japanese had prepared for the last war. The Marines had fought the next one. As supplies moved freely across the beaches the enemy had dismissed, one truth became unmistakable. The most dangerous enemy of any defensive plan is an attacker who refuses to behave as expected.